Hi, students. It's Professor Bryer and Elina, our embedded tutor again, sharing our tips and suggestions for working on Essay 3 on Man's Search for Meaning. Just like with the Frankenstein essay, it may help you as you read to have the essay assignment in mind so that you can jot down quotes or stories or examples you might use from the book for different sections of this essay. As with your other papers, this essay is not a conventional academic essay. In this essay, you're actually pretending to be Viktor Frankl, who is unfortunately no longer with us, but you're pretending to be him, and you're pretending that as Viktor Frankl, you got a letter from a guy named Gary, who is having a bunch of problems. And Gary has heard that Viktor Frankl had all these experiences in the concentration camps and after that informed the way he dealt with suffering and evil and all sorts of problems in life. And so in his letter, which you can read in this week's module, and should read, Gary names three specific problems. And you should make sure in your response to Gary, your essay is going to be response to Gary. Gary's asking Viktor Frankl for advice based on Frankl's experiences. So he's saying, I know you had all these experiences that shaped you. Gary hasn't read Man's Search for Meaning. He doesn't know much about Frankl except that he has a lot of wisdom about dealing with suffering. And Gary's saying, can you help me with these problems? And he, in his letter, Gary goes through three main problems he's dealing with. And what you're going to do is you're going to write Gary back. That's going to be your essay, your letter back to Gary, advising him on how he should, what you think he should do about these problems. And in order to make the case that you as Frankl would give this advice, you as Frankl should tell some stories about your experiences in the camp, give some specific examples from your experiences in the camp, and also after working as a psychiatrist to sort of use as evidence to show Gary that this advice you're giving him will be effective. So for example, in the beginning, Gary's talking about being dumped by his girlfriend who wanted him to make some changes, I think, in the way he was treating her. And he didn't really make those changes. And so she dumped him. And now he's feeling guilty. He's very sad. Um, he has a lot of regrets about the way he handled himself in the relationship. So here you might think about what does Frankl say about how we face suffering? Should we tune it out? Should we face it? Why might we want to tune out suffering? You might think about how sometimes the prisoners in the camps did tune out suffering to get themselves some relief. And also sometimes Frankl says facing our suffering, there can be benefits to that. So you might give an example from the book of somebody who faced their suffering and found that to be beneficial. You might give some examples of the book of how people tuned out suffering and how that could be beneficial sometimes. Um, Another problem Gary's having is he's trying to decide whether he should switch careers and become a nurse. Right now he's a bartender and it's fun, but he's looking for something more meaningful. You might think about what Frankl would say about that. What role, what does Frankl think ultimately makes us happy? What examples does he give of the kinds of things that cause us to become happy? Um, Gary also has some concerns about stress. He's worried studying to become a nurse will be very stressful. Frankl doesn't talk about stress directly in the book, but he does talk about tension, which I think is almost the same thing for him. So you might think about what Frankl says about tension, what examples he gives of how tension can be beneficial. So you might look for that section. And then the third thing Gary is wondering about is his girlfriend has taken up with his neighbor, and Gary's very angry that his neighbor is dating his ex-girlfriend and never said anything to him about it. And Gary wants to take revenge on his neighbor. He wants to like slash his tires or something crazy like that. So you might think about what Frankl says about prisoners who were freed, liberated from the camp, and also had an urge for revenge, and what Frankl said about that. So those are some ideas. The biggest mistake I would say people make on this essay is they give quotes maybe from Frankl, but they don't give stories and examples that they could apply to Gary's problems. So make sure you use at least one story or specific example from the book for each of Gary's problems. You could even use more. And of course, always remember you must use page numbers from the book. You must cite page numbers for any quotation you use from the book. I've got uh, some pointers down here at the bottom of the instructions, which I think you can read yourself. But I know also Elina had some suggestions to make about writing this paper too.
Yeah, hi guys. I'm definitely gonna sound like a broken record with these essays, but what I'm saying is true. So definitely number, please complete the reading because this paper, although the language wasn't hard, sometimes like the reading was pretty tough. And then like translating that reading into this paper, hardest part of this course. Like this essay was the hardest one. Um, But if you do the reading, you're obviously going to have a way easier time than if you don't. And just like with the Frankenstein reading, definitely keep this prompt in your mind as you're going through the reading and mark anything that you think you could use for like a quote or any evidence, a story you could maybe use in the essay, because the stories are definitely, it's like they are the details for this essay. So it's important to have them in there. And I remember I met with Professor Bryer about my paper, like maybe a couple times, just to make sure that I was on the right track and I had enough evidence in there. So I would recommend doing that if you feel like that's something you could benefit from. And did I mention anything else?
The other thing too is sometimes people are more comfortable meeting with another student. So
Right.
I
Yeah.
meet with you and Elena's available too. So either way, we're both happy to meet with you.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I tutored for another class for Professor Bryer, and I met with the students, and I thought it was great. Um, and I think they found it helpful, so I would be more than happy to meet with any of you if you feel like you need any help or just want someone to look at what you have so far.
Yeah, we had some students going back and forth between the two of
Yeah,
us. Whatever you need. There were some students in that class who just made tremendous strides. And I think that's because they were using the available help. And so, yeah, don't be shy about reaching out to us. Anything else you can think of, Alina?
yeah, just the discussion posts are also helpful. So definitely participate and read what other people are saying. Don't just like do your post and reply to a couple people. Like read. I read all of them and I found it really helpful.
Yeah,
Just to see what other people are thinking. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there are a lot of things that make online classes harder, but having the discussion all written out is
Yeah,
is a real incredible resource when you're writing papers.
definitely.
All right.
That's it.
Yeah, let us know if there's anything we can do to help or if you have any questions about SA3.